Hej och välkomna tillbaka till Healthcare Direkt som nu gör sitt första program efter jul- och nyårshelgen igen. Idag ska vi prata om Alzheimersområdet där det kommit spännande nyheter under tiden från föregående avsnitt. Och därför har vi med oss Gergana Almquist på Redeye som är analytiker där. Vi ska prata om Eli Lillys fas 2-resultat från Trailblazer-studien som kom ut med positiva resultat på deras primära mål, och aktien var då upp 12% på måndagen, vilket är väldigt mycket i monetära termer för ett så stort bolag som Eli Lilly. Welcome to the show, Gergana.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Could you shortly describe the results from Eli Lilly?
Well, the Trailblazer study was a study of a randomized placebo-controlled study of 272 patients. And it was tested, they were selected on the basis of their cognitive function and the presence of amyloid plaque in their brains. So what the study was looking at is how their parameters would change from baseline until 76 weeks. And they were tested, they were measured with a scale which Eli Lilly developed specially internally to measure function and daily life, cognitive function and daily life performance. So on the basis of this study, Eli Lilly found that the top line results were positive and the primary endpoint was met. The plaque in the patient's brain was basically cleared out and their function was improved. And so this is the first study where Eli Lilly, in the course of 30 years of Alzheimer's research and clinical testing, has shown any positive results. And this is, of course, positive for the whole amyloid beta hypothesis field. We, however, have to wait for the to see the full results, because right now we don't know anything about the secondary endpoints. We don't know exactly how it was measured and how these measures would compare to other compounds, like, for example, Bioarctic's compound BAN2401. So we will be waiting to see more detail in the ADPD conference in March to be able to say exactly what was accomplished in this study with the compound.
Yeah, and when Eli Lilly presented this news, their CSO, Daniel Skowronski, said, "It's a big moment for Alzheimer's patients. There is hope again." Was he a little bit overreacting about the importance of the results? Because, for example, Bioarctic have had BAN2401 out for a long time.
Yes, I also watched an interview with the CEO of Eli Lilly, and I was surprised that he didn't mention, he said Eli Lilly's compound was the only one and the first to show disease-modifying effect, which is simply not true. I personally believe that the Bioarctic's compound, BAN2401, should receive much more attention because, first of all, there's several components of this. Eli Lilly has a history where they conducted very large phase 3 trials on compounds which failed, and this time they made a smaller study and they want to submit it for application with the FDA, so to apply at the FDA for approval on the basis of this study. And we believe Bioarctic has a more solid approach. It has a very well-structured study process of BAN2401 and a much better basis for making the claim that the compound really works and it has a disease-modifying effect. First of all, we found out that there is no need for titration when you treat the patients with BAN2401. That therefore the highest dosage can be given immediately. There's very low side effects when treated with BAN2401. and the cognitive and the effects can be seen immediately, and they're sustained over time. Given that we already know this, and it was known in the field in advance, I'm surprised that Eli Lilly didn't mention this in the presentation.
Yeah, and Eli Lilly actually wants to go fast to the market, and they have started another phase 2 study that they say is pivotal and aim to search conditional approval. What is the risk when you're talking about the healthcare authorities when you're going from phase 2 directly and want to have a conditional approval?
Well, the risk is what we already saw with aducanumab, that your data is simply not solid and consistent enough. And when you try to rush things and go for registration, you will meet eventually resistance from people who want to have a really good compound on the market rather than the fast and easy one, not properly tested one.
So is it correct to say that Bioarctic's way with their phase 3 study is a safer way to go to the market?
I would call it that is a clever way, because then you know exactly how to the dosage, and you have much more information, and the information you submit for approval is much more solid, and you have many more arguments rather than we need the treatment now to argue why you should be granted approval. And and this is a very hot. I mean, the Alzheimer's field is a very hot field. Everybody wants to be first, disease modifying, but you have to. What we saw in November was that the independent advisors to the FDA was very positive, but the independent advisors said that rather than rushing this and having a compound on the market which is less than optimal and doesn't have a very solid data, we should really wait until we have something really good we can give to patients. And I think this is. I mean, of course, we don't know what the FDA will do in March when it decides the destiny of aducanumab, but I think the probability is very high that they will reject it due to the build-up from the scientific community of an attitude that we need to, rather than rushing this and just having some solution out there that doesn't really have a very solid scientific basis and clinical databases, we should wait until we have a compound such as Bioarctic, which has very solid clinical data. It has no contradictions so far in the data, and I believe that going slow and doing it thoroughly is much better than rushing to be the first disease-modifying treatment. The risk is that you simply will be rejected, and then the stock will crash 40%, like we saw in November.
Yeah. Could we also go in a little bit about the differences in the scale they use in their trials? I mean, Eli Lilly has one scale that they made, and then Bioarctic used another. And in this study started in the autumn with 500 patients, Eli Lilly has a third scale.
Yeah. Well, this is something we really have to look at when the results become published, because, I mean, Eli Lilly applies their own composite scale, which combines cognitive function with daily function, like physical function, and Bioarctic applies another measurement scale, cognitive measurement scale. And right now we don't know how well these two compounds can be compared. And another thing is that, I mean, donanemab, the mechanism of action is that it targets more the fibrils and the plaque in the brain, which is the more solidified form of amyloid beta protein, while the Bioarctic's compound targets more the soluble toxic forms of amyloid beta. I mean, according to the amyloid beta hypothesis, what is causing deterioration in the brain is the the toxic forms. And the Bioarctics compound is designed accordingly. It's designed to clear up the toxic forms and compared to the nanomab, which clears the plaque. The thesis there is that when you clear the plaque, you will also clear the toxic forms subsequently, and therefore you will also see improvement in the patient's function and the cleaning of plaque in the brain. So these two compounds have a different mode of action while being in the same, using the same hypothesis to treat Alzheimer's. How much they can be compared right now, we don't know because we missed the data from the data from the clinical trial for donanemab, which we will have in March. And then we can see how these two antibodies can be compared. And we will see what actions Eli Lilly will take with the FDA. And I really hope they will not rush it straight to conditional registration, because we have seen enough of this drama already. And I mean, the Alzheimer's field is a graveyard of projects over the last 30 years that didn't go anywhere because of poor targeting profiles, poor understanding of how the antibodies should be designed and what exactly should be cleared and how it should be measured. So we really have to slow down now and have a compound which is properly studied and understood, and where everybody can agree that this has a high probability to have an impact for patients.
Yeah, for sure. Biogen and aducanumab has taken many turns in their path for aducanumab. But now we'll see more results, as you say, in March for Eli Lilly, and then we will look into that more, of course. But thinking of the evaluation of Bioarctic, what is your view on that?
My view is that the company is greatly underestimated and undervalued. I mean, Bioarctic has a very solid pipeline. It has 2 projects in clinical development, of which BAN2401 is the most advanced. But it also has the compound in Parkinson's, the ABBV0805, which is in clinical phase 1 and going into phase 2. It has demonstrated a stellar drug development capabilities. It has a very, it simply has a lot of cash to further develop its pipeline. It has a blood-brain barrier technology, diagnostic tools, and our evaluation right now is that the fair value of the stock is about 150 SEK per share, which means about 50% upside from current levels. And we believe that in 2021, we will start seeing where the results from the phase 3 study Clarity AD are going. We will see indications of that. And I think that investors maybe are nervous due to the history of the projects in the amyloid beta field, which have a very high rate of failing. Right now, we're working with 55% of probability of success of approval for Bioarctics compound. And our view is that the company will continue to innovate, and on the basis of these core capabilities it has and of the very solid success of its lead compound, it's very undervalued right now. And investors should take a position before indications start to appear in the upcoming conferences and in presentations about the results from the phase 3 study next year.
And turning to triggers for the shares, for the Bioarctic share, would you say the first readout of Clarity would be the main trigger, or which other triggers do you see?
Bioarctic has, well, there will be several conferences on which data will be presented this year. And of course, the main trigger will be next year, the official presentation of the results from a phase 3 study. but I think on these conferences this year and at the beginning of next year, we will start seeing indications. I mean, for example, patients drop out due to safety reasons could be one indications, which I don't believe will happen. But like how the study progresses and how the success will be indicated before, because if something is wrong with the study, we will know. We will see that in the before the official results. So I believe that the triggers for the stock will be the ongoing presentations of results this year.
Yes.
And next.
To wrap up, I just want to mention the share price development we had this Monday. Bioarctic was up 6%, as we can see in the graph, and Bioarctic has had a volatile share price development, especially as you see here. This is from 1 year back, and you can see in March you had like this COVID downturn, and then it was going up again, and then you have this peak in November when you had a positive comments in the protocol for the advisory meeting in US for aducanumab, and then when they made a negative decision not to recommend aducanumab for approval, it went down again, and as you can see in the far right, 6% up this Monday. What do you think, Gergana, about 6% after Eli Lilly's positive result? Was that fair?
My view is that while the companies are active in the amyloid beta hypothesis general field, each compound should be seen on its own merit, because they have different mechanisms of action and they have different targeted profiles, they have different clinical profiles, and yes, they can be compared to an extent, but we should not overreact when a compound in a similar compound in the same field changes destiny, so to say. I mean, if the destiny of aducanumab, the destiny of donanemab should not be related to the Bioarctic stock at all, because they have different profiles, they have different clinical results, they're in different clinical stage, they're measured differently. Right now, we don't know much even about the Trailblazer-studie, and I think that fine, it's okay to connect the stocks in the same field up to a point, but it should not be an overreaction, like by association. And I think Bioarctic should be seen on its own merits, because it's a different company with different capabilities than Eli Lilly.
That makes sense. So thank you for having with us in the show. It was interesting to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Nu ska vi röra oss vidare, för det har ju hänt en hel del annat under jul- och nyårshelgen. Vi har med både bolag som har rört sig upp en del och två stycken som har rört sig ner en hel del. Vi börjar på den positiva sidan. Där hade vi då Medivir. De tecknade ett licensavtal för birinapant med IGM Biosciences. Och i tisdags så var aktien upp 30% efter det här. Och villkoren då var att man får en upfront på $1 miljon. Och sen så har man $1,5 miljoner som man får i samband med att man går in i fas 1. Studier då, första studierna på människa då. Och sen har man även möjliga milestones på upp till $350 miljoner. Samt om den når försäljning då, så kan man ha en stigande royalty på försäljningen upp till och med en mid-teens på försäljningen, royalty-satsen. Och när de pratar om det här så har du ju deras vd Yilmaz Mahshid. De har ju även andra substanser ute som de vill licensiera ut, både Reministat och MIV 711. Han ville under konferensen inte kommentera det här utan tyckte det var bättre och som han sa, under deliver and over promise. Vi kan ju titta lite, för vi hade med i senaste programmet Medivir, men vi har en kursgraf här och det är också då 12 månader tillbaka i tiden. Och som så många andra, man kan se den här covid-nedgången och återhämtningen tidigt under föregående år. Och sen så hade vi ju då mot slutet av året, långt till höger i den här grafen, nedgången man hade efter kapitalanskaffningen som de meddelade att de skulle göra. Och allra längst till höger då ser man den här stora uppgången igen när man har återhämtat en del efter att man tecknade det här licensavtalet. Och efter att man tecknade det här så har även analytikerna gjort sitt. Och SOB var ute och höjde rekommendationen till behåll från sälj. De satte då en riktkurs som de sänkte. Den ligger på 11 kronor och låg tidigare då på 18 kronor. Och då kan man se hur det jämför sig med kursen här. Och ska vi då titta på de andra bolagen då som inte har gått lika bra under jul- och nyårshelgen. Ja, då kan vi först vända oss till en utav vinnarna under föregående år 2020, Hansa Biopharma. Jo, men de har fått en trög start på året. Och som man kan se här så har de ju haft en ordentlig, riktigt stark utveckling under föregående år. Det hade också 12 månader tillbaka i tiden. Och framförallt fram till sommaren där hade de en riktigt god utveckling. Men nu på slutet, den här längst till höger där man kan se, så har det ju gått ner då, så det är en trög start. Och tittar man då 8 januari så backar aktien drygt 8%, det är det man ser långt till höger där. Då hade man ett bakslag i genterapiprojekt, vilket man gör under ett partnerskap med Sarepta Therapeutics. Och tycker man då att 8% ned var tråkigt, så kan man ju då titta på hur det gick för Sarepta då, som gick ned 51% efter de här beskeden, också den 8 januari. Tittar man på dagarna som har följt efter den nedgången på 8, så har ju Hansa Biopharma då fortsatt ned. Sen såg jag när jag tittade på öppningen idag att det fanns en vändning. Men vi kan konstatera att Hansa Biopharma, de har fått en trög start på 2021. Vi har slutligen även Karolinska Developments som också drabbades av ett bakslag i sitt portföljbolag Aprea Therapeutics. De är noterade i USA på Nasdaq. Här var nedgången nästan 18% och det var den 28 december, så det var innan vi hade firat nyår. Och vad hände då? Jo, Aprea Therapeutics kandidat, den heter Aprea i fas 3. Den nådde alltså inte primära målet och då fick aktierna denna tråkiga resa. Men tittar man då på Aprea Therapeutics så kan man vara som ägare i Karolinska Developments glad om man inte satt med även direktinvestering i Aprea Therapeutics. För den var då ner 78%. Så en riktigt kraftig nedgång. Och med det så vill vi tacka så mycket för att ni tittade. Och så får ni gärna klicka en tumme upp och följa oss. Och sen kommer ett nytt program nästa torsdag. Tack så mycket för att ni tittade. Hej!